Okay, good afternoon, and thanks everybody for joining today's kickoff to the openIDL Industry Test Drive. I'm here today. My name is Truman Esmond. I'm the Vice President Solutions and Partnerships with AAIS and the Chair of the Applications Governance Committee of openIDL. I'm joined by Bertrand Portier from IBM, Distinguished Engineer and the Executive Lead for openIDL that I've been working with over the last year and a half. We're going to take you through the introduction to openIDL, some of the details, as well as the technical architecture and what we plan on accomplishing over the next 3 weeks for the industry test drive. So a bit of an introduction to what is openIDL. It is the only property casualty insurance industry network that supports insurance ecosystem workflows with built-in data controls and improved security. That sounds like quite a mouthful, but we're actually going to be able to get a lot of value out of that and explain exactly why that is changing or has the potential to change the insurance industry as we know it today. Starting with openIDL members, it is in a growing ecosystem of members across the insurance industry. Today, starting with insurers, regulators, and advisory organizations like AAIS, this is the network of data participants for regulatory reporting. As that sits on top of, those members leverage openIDL as a data access platform. That is a blockchain fundamental network that allows data owners to interact with their data or allow interaction with their data in the context of a specific transaction by a third party. In this case, for our current use case and what we'll be testing through the industry test drive is a regulatory reporting data call. Beyond that, industry implementations that will leverage this platform are really of wide variety, and we're already starting with working groups that are tackling a few of these questions that have come out of the box. Certainly broader regulatory reporting, allowing much broader, tighter grant and timely information to both the markets as to regulators, as well as broader industry applications, and we'll talk about more of those in just a minute. So starting with the industry test drive, give me 1 second while I switch screens, and we'll take you through a bit of a demonstration of what openIDL looks like today. Stop sharing briefly while I switch to the browser view. Okay, hopefully everybody should see my browser at this point. openIDL, sorry, Bertrand, everybody good? Cool. So at its face, openIDL is a web application like many others. Behind the scenes, it's got different technologies that drive it, but we'll interact with openIDL through web interfaces, APIs, and other ways that we would interact with other applications. So openIDL supports data calls and the creation of data calls by regulators, the evaluation of data calls for participation by carriers, the building of data call structures, so the queries to bring data together, as well as the visualization of that data to the market and to regulators by advisory organizations or statistical reporters like AAIS. And those 3 members support that process. We'll walk through that process today using the web interface, beginning initially with the regulator. Oops, and actually I'm in the wrong environment. Dope. Their demo environment, that's what we want. Demo. This is the one we want. So many environments. Very good. Okay, this is a demonstration environment we just set up for the industry proof of concept. You'll see that there's only one draft data call in there today. As we go through, we can go through the issued and the abandoned data calls tab. We see a few that are out there, and then obviously the abandoned ones are ones that we can get rid of. So we'll walk through it from the beginning. As a regulator, I've logged in as our friend David from Colorado. Create a new data call. This might be used, let's say, for a, let's say avalanche warnings. For homeowners. How many homeowners are going to be in avalanche? So how at risk is our homeowners, apologize for spelling, are our homeowners from avalanche? minor. We'll do it just for 1 month, January of this year. And we'll do some loss dates. Again, we'll just do from, we'll do the same time, even though these are just examples. So 1st through 31st. We'll go ahead and circulate this publicly. We'll want a deadline of this. We'll say tomorrow. This is to see if we are trending towards better support of avalanche prone homes in our state. We'll see why we can say Colorado in a second. So all homes above 5,000 feet, let's say. Insurers in Colorado. Oops. Cool. So while we walk through these, let me describe the fields very quickly. So we have a name for our data call, obviously the line of business that it supports, and this is defined by the NAIC line of business. A quick description of what that's going to do, why we're doing this data call. I've logged in as a Colorado regulator, so this is going to be for my jurisdiction, with premium and loss dates within the bookends we defined. And actually, I did that incorrectly. Go to 12/31. There we go, full year. And we'll do the deadline. Obviously, we'll do the deadline later since it is going to be next year. We'll go ahead and make it next year. Seems reasonable. Public circulation, the regulator is going to share this information with their constituency, presumably homeowners in Colorado. The purpose will be using this to help the carriers understand why we're making this data call, to hopefully encourage them or incentivize them to participate, and really to help them empathize and understand with why the regulators are asking the question in the first place. Detailed criteria in terms of what data will be required. And we'll go into this in more detail in just a second. Be reported. And then of course, any homeowners insurer in Colorado will be eligible for this data call. So this is going to be issued as a draft. Data call has been saved. We get visual confirmation. And actually we'll do a quick look here, and we can actually see that we actually did create a new block in the ledger, and we'll go look at these in just a moment. But we've got a new data call for avalanche warnings in Colorado. Now I can go ahead and log out. Now this data call is drafted as a regulator. I can see how the industry is going to respond to that. And I will log in as a fictitious carrier, user 1 at our multi-tenant carrier 1. And I can log in and see that there's a new draft data call out there that I can look at. I can see the details that were put in there. I can see what's happening there, and I can see what's going on. I can go and say, yeah, the goal is I can read what's going on, why this regulator has asked about that data call, and agree to participate in it if it makes sense to me. I might even be able to offer some critique of that in an offline forum. So I'm going to go ahead and like that data call, but there might still be some more coming. There's also going to be some additional information that's going to further flesh out this data call as we go through, and that's going to be provided by AAIS. AAIS interacts with the network through another peer that AAIS manages, and we'll get into that in the architecture in just a minute, but we essentially see the same thing because we're participating with the same ledger. So this draft data call is out there. AAIS can see that exists. We can set a forum URL for that so that we can actually go have offline, conversations about this data call to help make it better. And add more value to that data call. Maybe carriers as well as advisory organizations might have some additional things that we could ask for to make sure that we can get some even better answers coming out of it. And then we can look at it and say, yep, as AAIS, we can like that call too. We can also, as AAIS, view the organizations that have liked that. This is not available to the regulators or to the other participants. We have a couple of special privileges as AAIS. So now we can go back in as the regulator. Log out here. Seeing that we've got a couple of likes here. Got 2 likes, fantastic. That's good enough for me. We're gonna go ahead and issue this data call for Colorado. Data call has been issued. So now when I click over the issue tab, we've got a new avalanche warnings data call. Let me go ahead and log out again. And then because that has just been issued, AAIS now has some work to do. This is where some of those details become very important. So let me look here. We can go into this data call that was just issued. We've got a couple of things we need to do. So that's going to be expected at the end of January, the end of December, the last date of that, and it's due January 1st. So we're going to go ahead and turn that around pretty quickly. We're going to say the report delivery date is going to be expected on the 3rd. Nice and quick return. And then the other thing we need to do is set an extraction pattern, or what we're actually calling interaction patterns with that data. And this is there's 2 different patterns that we have loaded, and this is essentially the transparent query that is used to interact with the data that exists in the harmonized data store. And we'll get some more details there. But what we can do here is actually I can see, as a user, I can download that pattern, see a description of what's going on, tells me exactly what's going to happen when that data call fires, exactly what's going to be executed when that data call fires, and then I can download that into an Excel file and see exactly what's going to be fired when the time comes. And I'm going to need to change applications again real quick so you can see what it is here. When I do that, you can actually download and see the code that will actually be run when the data call fires. Looks like, it's a fairly simple, fairly understandable code indicating the types of data codes that would be pulled from the data, what data fields, and then this data is associated to the data call itself and is part of the immutable auditable record of this data call. So go back to the web interface. Cool, so you can download that extraction pattern, and that, once that is saved into this extraction pattern, that extraction pattern is saved to the data call. That data call is now immutable. So now when I go back, log out, and I log back in as a carrier, you can see that issued data call. And now I can see exactly what's going to happen when if I choose to consent to that data call. Because at this point, now that it's issued, I've got some additional options. I can see that there was 2 likes in history. I can see the report delivery date has been updated. I can see that when the data call was issued. I can see the additional information that is now finalized. I can go participate in the forum offline. So about challenges people might have or questions people might have if there's additional clarity, because of course the data call itself won't change without changing consents and reissuing it. So we want to have as much opportunity for information offline as possible. As a carrier, I can agree to say, yep, this looks good. I will agree to participate in that. I'm going to go ahead and consent to the report. And that will be recorded. So until the data call fires at the deadline at 1/1/2020, that's where we sit. But what we can do is go into the actual blockchain platform and see what's happening on the different channels or the ledgers that are underneath the hood that are tracking that data that we just provided into the interface. And we'll start with the default channel. And this is the ledger that all the different participants participate in. And we can go jump in and see that we were creating some blocks here this morning. We'll go ahead and do we'll go ahead and just look at this last one, see what's actually in the ledger itself. This is a consent entry that has some hash information that's again is a block. So this is the actual carrier that consented, but you can see we can't see which carrier did it. We can see that which version they consented to. We have some hash information about the timestamps and some conceptual data, but we cannot see who actually performed that consent. We can see that it was incremented. If we go back to some more detailed channels that don't have that same level of visibility, in this case, the carrier 1 that actually did it, we can see that their block has a related element. Oh, actually it shows the data. Of course, I grabbed the wrong block. But there's their block, their channel will show that particular element that contains any private data about that unique company's acceptance to the consent for that data call. Once the data call is complete, we can go back in and actually view reports. And so when it is complete, I can log back in as AAIS. Go to the issue report, and I can add a report link to it. And I will do that here, I think, yes. And then we can put the report hash in there. And this is the encrypted string that validates that the report that is generated is the same one that will ultimately be received. So I can go ahead and update this. Obviously, I'm doing this in advance, so the report obviously isn't created yet. But just for the purposes of our example here, we can go ahead and put the report out there. And we can see that now when the data call completes, the regulator reviews and ultimately publishes that report. This link will be available to all the members of the network, as well as the participating companies. And instead of a static type of report that they might get in the past, a PDF or a static document, they'll be able to get a dynamic report that'll be delivered through the platform, allowing them to dig into the data and answer some more detailed questions and make use of that information as soon as it comes back, instead of getting a data cube that they then must go through and analyze themselves, which takes time and effort to get to potentially variable information and answers coming out of it. So with that, I will stop the demo for a second. And by the way, we do have Q&A, so please feel free to ask questions as we go through here. We've got other folks online that will chime in and make sure we do it. This is, do want this to be interactive, and we are recording this for the future. So please help us make sure this is valuable for everybody. So let me get back to the presentation here. Okay, so that is the demo and a bit of peek behind the scenes. That front end was generated by a lot of different technologies under the hood. But at the end of the day, what we've created in that environment is a mechanism for, that really delivers dramatic value to the industry, and particularly for data owners, solving some of the problems that we think that we're realizing and understanding in insurance that data owners have. Some of the strategic value that they will get out of participating in openIDL is the ability to standardize their private and proprietary data, bringing that information into a usable environment completely under their control, and the ability, as we just saw, to accept or consent to a transparent, secure interaction with that data, not sharing the data, but allowing that data to be queried or an insight to be derived from that data to a third party, an untrusted third party, like in the case of a regulator, or in the future, perhaps an agent, a reinsurer, or even a policyholder. The big thing about establishing the trusted platform is having an empathetic and accountable governance structure for that technology, the data, those standards, and how they move to make sure they're meeting the needs of the community and the functionality it's supporting, and the community itself. Who's part of the community? This is an open community, but it's private. It is permissioned. It is people are participating who are known entities, even if they're participating in a transaction in an anonymous capacity. Nobody's here who shouldn't be here. Tactically, just by getting started very quickly, there's some immediate near-term cost savings that can be realized by data owners, in this case, the insurance companies. In addition to employee development and redeployment by getting education and training for staff, as well as being able to put them onto more valuable activities and away from overhead sorts of activities. Certainly improve regulatory relationships. The commitment we've already seen by carriers and regulators to be working together both in the same room and according to clear rules of the game has really changed the opportunity for the industry for the better, and enabling innovation and new ways of experiencing insurance in a dramatically different way. There's new value out of this process as well. Data owners now are getting new insights by being able to see their own reflection in the data that's going to regulators in near real time. So as the data goes into their harmonized data store, they'll be able to query that, get reports, and be able to see information as it's happening relative to other data in the system or the last data that was aggregated across the system, so they know how they're performing relative to regulatory guidelines, relative to market and competitive standards and other things. The big part of the network itself, and really what the whole purpose of blockchain really brings to it, is bringing together a diverse membership community and aligning them around those common values and why we're really here to deliver insurance. We all recognize that we've got different motivations, and at some point, how far we trust each other is going to change when we've got different profit motivations, incentive, and regulatory standards that we need to abide by, and obligations to other of our own constituencies. But understanding from where we begin and how to establish a common, resilient, and efficient insurance community is really where we all are going. Some of the benefits from these things of what we can get out of openIDL is now data owners have data controls. They can see, they have really true control over where that data is, for what purpose, how long people get to access it, what that data looks like, with authentic and auditable records of how that data got into the system, how it's been manipulated or changed, making sure that that data that's being used to answer a question in the future has got the provenance and can be trusted to continue to answer that question. Operational efficiencies, we're already seeing dramatic gains, both on our side at AAIS as a provider of this service, but also on behalf of our members. They're already anticipating up to 80% savings in both third-party fees for regulatory reporting, as well as the FTE costs supporting this largely overhead effort, and being able to deploy them, as we mentioned, to both educational and more innovative and value-driving activity within the organization, and being able to be fully transitioned to this modern platform well within 3 years. By having your data into a harmonized data store, really one of the key strategic values and benefits for data owners is establishing standards that will give them choice. That gives you, with data in a common system of record, with a known level of trust at a monthly, quarterly, weekly, or even daily level of trust, having that data in a standard format in a central way gives the opportunity to change the different ways of interacting with that data via APIs, via endpoint systems like policy administration systems or analytic solutions. Being able to switch those out and provide those experiences for the different stakeholders in the way they need to interact with that data and the way they need to do their work. Then by having that data in a trusted and protected environment, we can leverage it for next generation products and policyholder experiences. Being able to leverage information that would otherwise be prevented from access due to its privacy or sensitivity due to location or competitive standard, we can now leverage that information to provide insurance in a much better way, whether it's pre-deploying resources and mitigating risk in advance of storms, or better understanding the true risk out there by better analyzing municipal or building data, as well as public-private partnerships potentially. We'll talk about that in just a second on the regulator side. The value proposition for the regulators is similar but very different. They're looking for a way to better support a sustainable, resilient risk management, risk transfer industry. And to do so, they need to empathize with the industry. Certainly, one of the things we've recognized as AAIS is that's contentious. There's entire industries designed around lobbying and working with regulators. Whereas as we've noticed with design thinking, if we bring them into the room and get them to understand what their real goals are, they know they need to make a profit. They know they need to govern the industry. We agree, how do we better do that? And through clear, purposeful policy that actually will get benefits for both constituencies. The regulators will get a benefit, but the insurers will get a benefit as well, and not just by tighter regulations and finding the bad apples, but regulators can focus on those problem areas and really identify those players that are causing challenges to the competitive environment. And by leveraging or having that data that would otherwise be hidden from regulators and certainly competitors, but having that available, the opportunity for public-private partnerships to understand where the risks are, for example, as we look at coastal erosion or infrastructure failures or just the societal changes, and knowing how insurance can support these types of societal shifts. Tactically, when everybody's drinking from the same well, the regulators can expect higher quality data. That data is being used to pay commissions, to work with reinsurers, then regulators know that they're all participating in the same network and they can expect higher quality data. Again, regulators also need employee development and redeployment, for more value-driven activities, improved industry relationships. Regulators want to be seen as helping the industry, not certainly trying to hurt it or stifle it. Get better answers. I think regulators need more and more timely information, more detailed information, more insights about things that weren't there yesterday, risks like cyber and sharing and things like that. We need to be able to get to better answers, and we all need answers for those as well. So much better alignment around this diverse community who all has a common interest in seeing insurance be more successful, efficient, and effective. So the benefits, data quality is really the chief one. They can actually start to use this information that is auditable to make better decisions around policy, empathizing with the members, to the insurance industry, to get to the right answers that will provide the industry more value and make better regulatory policy decisions. By getting behind standards, the regulators can help drive tons of efficiency in the industry, as well as provide opportunities for innovation, and really give the industry what it's clamoring for in terms of some direction and opportunity to create strategic investment in technology and platforms for opportunity, so that they can get new products to market that maybe were difficult to manage before and has thus been prevented. With this level of visibility, regulators can start to create sandboxes or mechanisms for new innovative ways of underwriting, pricing, product delivery, claims delivery, to be brought into market without creating systemic risks or compromising fairness in the marketplace. So how's all that happen? The technology itself is part of it, but the governance platform and making sure that this tool that everybody's going to start to entrust their data and the rules around interacting with their data to is transparent all the way to the bottom of the pool, so that there's no opportunity for malfeasance to enter the platform and your data to be used in a way that you didn't expect. So we've got some very high level organizational principles that we went into it from the beginning. Not for profit, not transactional. openIDL does not have a transaction fee for the platform. From openIDL, there is a membership fee that is commensurate to the size of the organization and the relative value you would get from the network, but it is not a penny to play or another nickel to keep it moving. There obviously are operational pieces that need to be supported, cloud environments, and we'll talk more about those, and that will be the variable part of your participation. It requires committed member governance. The folks that are putting their data into the platform and having it stewarded by this governance are also have their hand on the bus. Those operations of that governance, as well as the technology itself, are completely transparent. The rules, the code that's released, the method by which that code is prioritized to be brought into the system, the QA that's done upon it, all that will be completely transparent and based on open technology frameworks brought to us by Hyperledger, originally donated by IBM. That whole process is shepherded using design thinking, empathy to make sure that the stakeholders across the different transactions, in this case, insurers and regulators and advisory organizations facilitating that process, are focused on the value and understand exactly how far the system needs to trust in order to provide the necessary function. Cross-stakeholder is critical, making sure everybody's there in the same room, seeing the looks on their faces, understanding the concerns and hopes that they have. And we do that on a quarterly basis with quarterly releases of the technology, new features being released all the time, and workshops, both in the business side and the development of new features, as well as the technology, architecture, and infrastructure side to bring those new features and desires to light. The governance itself is fairly simple and growing and offers a variety of different ways for members to participate. Starting at the top with the executive board. This is the board of directors with the president of AAIS, and certainly we sit on there. That's Ed Kelly. The openIDL Technical Governance Committee. Most of you may have met Joan Zerkovich on our last call, who chairs this committee. And that's, as we mentioned, where all of the other elements flow through and where the technology is actually deployed that supports openIDL. New members are accredited and understood through this process. New code is added to the code base and ultimately released through here. Underneath the Technology Governance Committee are three governance bodies: regulatory, data, and applications. Regulatory Governance Committee interacts with the NAIC and the state regulatory bodies, as well as the compliance professionals and folks that are responsible for regulatory compliance on the company side and other areas to make sure those features are brought into and related to government operations within the governance of openIDL. The Applications Governance Committee on the other side is building forward for all the different things that openIDL could do in the future, building from the policy and claims data streams that are part of the regulatory stream for all kinds of new purposes, reaching out more broadly into the market, incorporating new stakeholders, and providing new value. We've already started 4 working groups around homeowners, flood, moving towards a private flood program, with auto and subrogation, certainly a popular use case, both in proof of insurance and subrogation across auto, the largest property casualty insurance product. And of course, reinsurance, great opportunity for reinsurers to participate in the network in a very similar way as regulators do today. Those functions are supported by the Data Governance Committee, specifically the standards of data that are in the harmonized data store that are leveraged both by regulators as well as all the other stakeholders in the insurance industry and beyond. The Data Governance Committee will shepherd different data models incorporated into the harmonized data store for different purposes and transactional needs, supporting different types of things as we go across our working group, simply, for example, like border row reports, concentration of risk reports, for homeowners, bringing in IoT data for flood sensors, for cyber devices and being able to manage those. For flood, bringing in all kinds of data, both from government and municipal resources, as well as geospatial data, predictive modeling and AI tools, and much more. The Data Governance Committee brings that data in, relates that, understanding it, where that relates to the IIW, as well as to the regulatory reporting data standard, which is the AAIS defined standard of the data that is required for property casualty insurers to get their data to regulators. The data that they need to provide is going to be different depending on the type of work they do, the size of their organization, the states they operate in. But from all the data that's defined, AAIS is creating a standard data schema that if you were to fill that schema in the openIDL harmonized data store, you would have the data present to be able to respond to any future regulatory reporting data call. And that is the value in the short term of openIDL, and a bit about the future of openIDL as we work beyond out of the industry into the broader working groups. So the working groups take a bit of that information and take it forward. We go through building the backlog of features, the things that we want to do, and going through those committees, make that wish list and understanding prioritizing it by impact, feasibility, and of course, different funding mechanisms. We will plan those out to be delivered in a quarterly release over the course of the roadmap, both for openIDL as a platform for the regulatory reporting functionality that AAIS supports, as well as the features and the tracks that'll support all the different methods of interaction that openIDL can support as we bring on different member types like reinsurers or agents, and into different deployment mechanisms, for example, like deploying the harmonized data store onto an iWatch or onto a vehicle. So with that, kind of talk into the architecture a bit. We mentioned the harmonized data store, some of those pieces, but before we get into too deep, I wanted to just show where these were, go into the rest of the outline for the rest of the industry test drive over the next couple of weeks, and then really lead into our session tomorrow that Bertrand will be talking about the architecture. So just a bit of a teaser before we go into that. The key thing of the value propositions that we talked about and the key features really center around the harmonized data store. And for folks that saw the kickoff, we talked about this briefly, but each carrier has their own peer that has the ledger that we saw today, the channel, as well as the harmonized data store and the mechanisms to bring data in and for that data to be transmitted to AAIS or the aggregation point for ultimate reporting. That again is blockchain at the core, making sure that we've got the audit trail built on open technology with Hyperledger, distributed control. So carriers and data owners have complete control over their information, where they put it, how and if and when it's ever shared. And it's within their control, not only of a physical control, but their decision control to put it in the environment that makes the most sense for them, in the cloud carrier of their choice, or in their basement, if that's where they choose to hold it. With that, I'll turn it over to Bertrand to talk about where we are going in the rest of the industry test drive and leading into the architecture conversation tomorrow. Thank you, Bertrand.
Thank you, Truman. Now that you understand a little bit more about openIDL and why it was created, what it does, its governance structure, architecture, let's now talk about how you can evaluate openIDL and how you can better understand the fit for your organization. So before openIDL, a typical way for organizations to evaluate technology, software, etc., was to do POCs, proof of concept, right? But here, what we are doing is we are taking a new flavor of a POC. And if you think about what we are doing here, you're not on your own. When you evaluate openIDL, you evaluate the network. You evaluate joining a network. And here, what we are doing is an evaluation where it's a multi-participant evaluation. So you're not going to be on your own. We are going to facilitate the activities and the experiences, and you're going to be able to, from both a business standpoint and a technology standpoint, better understand, evaluate, and prove openIDL and its value to your organization. So this is the first time we are doing this for openIDL, and we plan to do this every quarter. So every quarter we get a chance to participate in those, what we call the industry test drive. The first one is happening now, and it goes over 3 weeks because we have Thanksgiving week in the middle where we take a break, but it's more or less 2 weeks worth of contents. Live sessions like this one today, like the kickoff, as well as recorded, right? So all of these are going to be recorded, and you can listen to the replay at your convenience. You're going to get a chance to both attend, ask questions, etc., and also have your hands-on keyboard, hands-on experiences. So you will see in the timeline, in the agenda, that you will have a chance as a business user to participate in a simulated data call. As a technical user, you'll have a chance to stand up your blockchain environment, right? So at a high level, this is what this is. This is a group exercise, a group evaluation for you to evaluate openIDL. And then the goal, if we are successful and if we can prove all these points or answer your questions, etc., is that by the end of the test drive, you're in a position to onboard openIDL to become a member. So next. So this is the high-level timeline and schedule. So today we are here doing the kickoff, right? It's Monday, and kickoff is 1 hour. We did a webinar earlier to introduce the test drive. Again, it is available and recorded if you want to listen to the replay, and that's available. And tomorrow, we're going to do the architecture review, and it's going to go a little bit longer, and we'll go a little bit deeper into what's openIDL made up of, what are our principles, etc. It's going to be a technical session. And then we're going to have another technical session. We call it the virtually guided node install. And here we're talking about blockchain. So you're going to be able to follow along and set up your blockchain environment. And the next session is the data call experience at the end of the week. And this is for business users, for statistical reporting, regulatory reporting people to experience and take part in a data call on openIDL. And then what we are doing during the second week, which is going to happen the week of December the 2nd, we are going to have two office hours, right? Office hours where we are going to be there, and the call is open. You can join us and ask any questions you have any types of discussions. We can go open the hood, look under the cover, what's happening. We can answer questions that you had. If you got stuck on one of the steps, for example, to set up your own environment, we can help you debug, etc., etc. And the test drive completes with what we call the final playback. So playback is a design thinking term that we use right at the end of a sprint, we do a playback with the stakeholders to show what we accomplished during the sprint. So here we have that, the sprint is a test drive, and we are going to show you the results of the data call experience and give you more pointers and prescriptive guidance on what you can do next. And one thing to remember that's important before we move to the next page is that you can sign up, right? If you're listening to the recording, you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up until Monday, December the 2nd, right? So that's the cutoff time, right? And that's because we're going to prepare data, prepare a report, etc. after that for the final playback, but you still have time to sign up until December the 2nd. And then if we go next, we're going to go into a little bit more detail about each of the sessions. So this is what's happening today, and we're almost done for this. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the resource requirements for each of the meetings, and then we're going to go into Q&A. And then the next one is the architecture deep dive. And really what we are going to do here is look at what are our principles? What are the things that will never change, no matter how openIDL evolves? What are the architectural principles for openIDL? Based off of that, the diagram that Truman showed before, we're going to go and describe that diagram in more details, then look at the data model. It's called the harmonized data model that we use for the industry, so everyone talks the same language. Look at the data architecture, data transformations, data quality, life cycle of the data, from what happens on a monthly basis when you update your environment to what happens when you decide to consent and participate in a data call. So you're going to see all of these things, and all these flows are going to be described. We'll talk about deployment options and list and describe the different software components that make up openIDL. And finally, in that session, which is going to be 90 minutes, we'll talk about onboarding and the assets and the offering that we have so that you can practically and quickly onboard openIDL. So we're going to have a lot of ample time for Q&A, very interactive. So please be prepared and be ready to interact and have questions related to the architecture, the data model, the data lifecycle, data controls, and anything related to technical. And then next is going to be the longest sessions we have. We expect it to go for about 3 hours. And what we are going to do there, we'll start with a quick overview of the blockchain components. This session is going to be all about blockchain. And we wanted to do that because blockchain is really the thing that for most of you is going to be new, and is going to be a differentiator as compared to existing data access platforms out there. So we really wanted to go deeper and have specific hands-on keyboard steps for you to set up the blockchain environment. And if you have an IBM cloud environment that you can access, you will be able to follow this along these steps, and you're going to be able to follow this and do this for your own environment. Truman mentioned that openIDL is a multi-cloud, supports multi-clouds, but here for this specific exercise, we picked openIDL on IBM Cloud because that's what we have ready to go in terms of tutorials step by step. But going forward for your onboarding, you have a choice of cloud. But if you want to follow along here, you do that on IBM Cloud. So our Krishna is going to work through this, right? And then at the end of this session, you're going to have your environment stood up in terms of all of the blockchain components, and you're going to be ready to, like if you were to participate in a data call. Okay, the next one here is called the data call demo. It's really a data call experience. It's more than a demo because you're going to be able to actually participate, right? You're going to be able to log in as for example, if we have a regulator to simulate the issuance of a data call, as a carrier to look at the data call requests, like Truman demoed earlier, eventually consent to the data call. And then we're going to provide sample data for you to participate in and join the activity. And then you're going to see what happens when a data call is issued, and each of the carriers participates in the data call, and how the experience allows for all of that to happen, including carriers, regulators, and AAIS as the entity that is going to answer the data call and prepare the report. So that's for the data call. And then office hours during the week of December the 2nd, 1 hour every day, pretty much, where we are here to answer any questions you have. So you join when you can, we will be there, and there is no wrong question, no anything you can ask on those calls, and we'll be there.
Anything technical, not personal.
Technical and business governance, etc. for
Right.
openIDL, AAIS, and IBM. And then next, okay. So I think go the other way. Yeah.
Oops.
Okay.
I think the title is out of date on this one. Oops.
This one is the final playback, right? This is going to be the culmination of the industry test drive, right? We're going to summarize what happened, right, in the during the test drive, and we will show you the report, right? The report that Truman mentioned will show you what happened for those participants that consented to data access for the data call. We'll show you the report and the answer back to regulators. And this is where we're going to spend time together to make sure you understand your next steps. After this evaluation, what happens next? What are your next steps for you if you think that we are successful in answering your questions, if the evaluation was successful? What do you need to do in terms of becoming a member of openIDL, and in terms of onboarding the network, standing up your environment, and getting your data ready? Okay, and that's what I had for the discussion of the test drive. Now, Truman, back to you for closing this session.
How about that for timing? We are right on schedule. 45 minutes with 15 minutes left for Q&A. I don't see anything having come through the Q&A board yet. We will be taking any questions that we receive via email, as well as anything through these webinars, and putting those up on the site, which you'll be getting via email as well. That will have links to all of the future webinars, forums, contact information, as well as the recorded sessions that are available. So I don't see anything out there right now. We'll give folks another question if anybody has one. Bertrand, did you have a question you'd like to answer?
What is openIDL again?
What is openIDL? It is the regulatory blockchain network for the property casualty insurance industry. Today, it's growing.
Yeah, so, and yeah, that's one thing I actually wanted to mention as you were demoing, Truman, that what you saw during the demo is only the first application that we built for openIDL. And as Truman mentioned, we are going to have other applications built by the industry, for the industry, as part of the industry working groups. And you saw the governance structure there. So the demo that you saw is just the first application, and it is the one that is ready to go, right? If you want to onboard, that is the one that you can start using today.
Right, but so as we look through the industry test drive, and we look through the different roles that we have today as data owners, as the regulators, or the third party that needs the insights from our data, that we don't necessarily trust, and then the governance, or the intermediary body that serves that role today, we can put that equation into a lot of different ways of different communities that we operate in business today. So the regulatory aspect of our work, the geospatial community in which we live, or the risk community that we are trying to mitigate, the stakeholder community, are we an insurer or a reinsurer or an agent? All those different perspectives are brought in, and where we're evolving from this single point of trusted data, which we see as kind of the last stop on the data flow train in the insurance industry. The regulators is where really the proof is in the pudding, and the data that we need to be accountable to at the end of the day. So building that forward from that one, a fairly, call it very thin point of trust today based on the data that's through there, we can build forward into a far more trusted industry and far more responsive applications and products and more empathetic experiences with the different users that we serve. Okay, didn't see any questions come in. So with that, I'll take this opportunity to wrap it up. Thank you everybody for your time. We look forward to working with you through the rest of over the next couple of weeks for this industry test drive. Please feel free to reach out to myself or to Bertrand if you have any questions in the meantime. And tell your friends. Feel free to share this information on social media or with your colleagues to bring more people on the bus. This is a team sport, as we've said, and we will say again. So bring your friends, and we'll be able to get to a much broader impact that much faster. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.